Hey guys, tonight we wander into the deep, frostbound heart of Siberia, where the trees speak in creaks and moans, and the snow isn't just cold, it listens. You'll follow a trail older than any village, a trail made of ash, moss, and whispers. There are no footsteps ahead of you, but the smell of fire, old fire, ritual fire, hangs in the air. They say the forest remembers. And tonight, it remembers you. You probably won't sleep near a mirror after this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, where are you watching from? What time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I always read them. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first step into the woods just as twilight fades, not the bright golden kind, the thick, silver one, like dust smeared in ashes. You don't remember how long you've been walking. It could be an hour, could be 100 years. Time doesn't move properly here. The trees loom like cathedral pillars, black pine, larch, birch twisted into impossible poses by wind, time, and whatever else lives deeper in. Your boots crunch softly over snow-dusted moss. Every now and then, a branch above sheds a fine powder of frost that drifts down like flour. It lands on your shoulders. It doesn't melt. You pause at a stump ringed in blackened bark. Fire touched, but it's not charred as if by lightning or wildfire. The burn is too neat, too circular, as if something ancient once sat at its base, something hot enough to blacken with but gentle enough not to crack it. You lean down. The air smells, not burnt, but singed, like old incense clinging to forgotten silk. There's a hush, not silence. That's too clean. No, this hush is layered. You can hear your own breath, the creak of your jacket, the almost whimper of wind rubbing itself through frozen leaves. But behind that, there's something else. A low hum. It's easy to dismiss at first, your ears adjusting to the cold. Maybe all blood moving through your head. But no, it's coming from beneath the snow. You kneel and brush back a patch of white. Beneath it, soot, a full ring of it, perfectly symmetrical, maybe a meter across. In the middle, pine needles shaped in a deliberate spiral, ending at a small stone with a hole drilled straight through it. You touch the stone. It's warm. You're far, far from any village now. The last one disappeared behind the trees hours ago. Or was it days? The Siberian taiga stretches across millions of square kilometers, making it the largest forest on Earth. But what the maps don't tell you is this: much of it is unwalked, undocumented, and, depending who you ask, unwelcoming. For centuries, nomadic tribes moved through these woods like smoke, quickly, quietly, leaving almost no trace. The Evenki, the Khanty, the Selkup, the Nganasan, each carried myths of the forest breath, its moods, its hungers. The fire circles, like the one you just uncovered, show up in oral histories but rarely in archaeological records. That's because they weren't built to last. They were built to vanish, burned clean, then covered again with snow or moss or earth. They were meant to be remembered only by the trees. You feel something shift in the air. Not wind. Pressure. A soft weight. Like something tall has just stepped in behind you. You don't look. Not because you're brave. Because something in you, older than your bones, tells you not to. Instead, you breathe slowly and walk on. You begin to notice small patterns around the forest floor. Symbols scratched into bark. Twine wrapped around saplings. Feathers jammed into ice cracks. These weren't made by animals. They weren't for decoration either. Each one feels cautious, like the forest's previous guests were leaving markers for themselves, or for others, or warnings. In 1927, a Soviet ethnographer named Vladimir Bogoraz documented a peculiar observation from a reindeer herder he interviewed in the lower Yenisei region. The man refused to sleep on unbroken snow, saying that fires remember where they've been, and to disturb old embers, even by accident, was to invite dreams not meant for humans. Bogoraz dismissed it as superstition. 3 weeks later, that same man vanished. No body was found, just a ring of scorched grass. In January, you pass a thicket and step into a small clearing. A sudden drop in temperature tickles the inside of your nose. Your breath clouds like fog. In the middle of the clearing, Another soot ring. This one's older. Cracked. There are bones arranged inside it. Not animal, not quite human. They look wrong. Longer than they should be. Sharper at the ends. Around perimeter, shards of ceramic. One fragment has red pigment in the shape of an eye. You pick it up. It's cold, then hot. You drop it. It doesn't hit the ground. You blink. It's gone. You feel dizzy. Some anthropologists believe these fire rituals were meant not to summon, but to distract, to draw attention away from the living. Smoke, after all, can hide. Flames can mislead. In one Kanti myth, a woman lured a death spirit away from her sick child by building a ring of decoy fires leading into a bog. The spirit followed the glow and never returned. Others say the fires weren't offensive. They were invitations. And once the fire was lit, you had to stay awake until the last ember died. Because the thing that came might sit across from you, quiet, staring, imitating your breathing, waiting to see if you blink first. Your fingers twitch. You keep walking. There's no moon tonight. Only clouds like crushed wool overhead, soaking up what little starlight there is. But something guides you. A faint orangey glow, far ahead, pulsing through the trees like a lighthouse lantern. And with it, the smell returns. Stronger now. Not wood smoke. Not quite. Something older. Thicker. A scent like burnt honey and copper. You taste it on your tongue. You step into a wide circle of flattened snow. In the center, a stone fire pit, unlit. Around it, 6 logs, arranged like spokes on a wheel, all facing inward. On each log, a small totem carved from bone, each smeared in faded paint. You recognize one of the symbols, barely visible. It's a reindeer, but the legs are too long, and the head is replaced with a flame. You sit on one of the logs. The air shifts again. And there it is, the hum, low, gentle, so deep it rumbles your ribs. You don't know whether it's coming from the ground or your own chest. It's calming, hypnotic, like a lullaby whispered through fur. Then the logs creak. Only one, the one directly across from you. It tilts slightly, then stills. There's nothing there, but the snow beneath it has begun to melt. And slowly, so slowly, a trail of warmth starts creeping outward from pit. You know what's happening. The ritual has begun. You didn't light a fire, but something remembers that you meant to, and that's enough. This forest is always run on memory. Trees don't forget, and neither do fires. Not here, not where the wind carries songs older than language. You sit still, heart quiet, eyes half-lidded. The glow from the fire pit begins to rise, not from flame, but from heatless light, like breath turned gold. You let yourself sink into it. You follow the faintest trace of embers through the blackened soil, and the frozen hush of the Siberian forest presses close around you, as though listening. The wind has slowed now, retreating like a breath held too long, and every branch overhead seems to lean in, twisted like crooked fingers around a secret. You sense it before you see it. Something old buried beneath the roots and snow. A place half remembered by the trees and entirely forgotten by most humans. The earth here feels scorched in memory, even if the fire itself is long gone. This, they once whispered, was the spine of the world. Not a metaphor. No, they meant it literally. You find yourself drawn to a ring of large trees, unnaturally even in their circle, their bark scorched at the base as though licked by a flame that burned cold and long ago. At the center, stones blackened with soot form a low cairn, their surfaces etched with crude symbols, spirals, claw-like strokes, and crude figures with stretched limbs and antlered heads. One of the stones is warm to the touch, just barely, but it's enough. You sit down, not because you're tired, but because the weight of silence here is like gravity, pulling your body toward the earth. Long ago, the Evenki and their ancestral cousins believed fire was not born of flint or friction. It was given, stolen from the underworld's iron heart and brought to the surface by the oldest spirits. They didn't simply light fires for warmth or food. No, fire was a bridge. Fire was a voice. Fire was memory. They whispered into the flames during the solstice and watched them whisper back. Each village had one chosen keeper of this knowledge, part shaman, part dreamer, part ghost. They were called by many names, though all the terms meant roughly the same. The one who walks backward in smoke. You imagine the first time they kindled these flames here. Before there were borders, before maps tried to flatten the world, before Siberia was even a name. A ring of humans shivering in bay fur, chanting rhythmically with voices so low they vibrated in the chest. The fire wouldn't catch it first. That was part of it. It needed to resist, to test them. Only when the shaman, her face veiled in raven feathers and ochre, cut a thin line into her palm and pressed it to the wood, did the fire leap up, as if tasting memory. They danced then. Not wildly, not joyfully, but slowly, each step drawn like a brushstroke in snow. The rhythm came from a drum made of reindeer skin, stretched and stitched with birch thread. The sound of that drum was said to match the heartbeat of the dead. Not metaphorically, the exact frequency, some claimed. Anthropologists who unearthed one of these drums in the early 20th century noted it produced a sound that lingered unnaturally in air, like a presence pacing just behind you. And still, the fire burned. Scholars debate what exactly was burned in these ritual fires. Charred remains examined decades ago contained animal bones, yes, but also wooden effigies covered in fur and beads, some with crude human shapes. In one particularly eerie dig, researchers found a doll carved from antler, its eyes drilled wide and its mouth covered with stretched hide, as if silenced. Some argued it was merely a child's toy, offered to the spirits. Others, more quietly, claimed it was used to trap voices. The idea was simple. Fire could speak, yes, but it could also listen. And what it heard, it could keep. The shamans would whisper their fears, their dreams, their betrayals into such dolls and burn them, not to destroy the secrets, but to release them into the smoke. There's a debate, ongoing and unresolved, about whether these fires served only symbolic functions, or they were part of complex psychoactive ceremonies. Mushrooms are often mentioned. The red-capped Amanita muscaria, toxic if prepared improperly, was central to many Siberian shamanic rites. But the fire, the elders insisted, purified the spirit. It was not the mushroom alone. It was the sequence, the rhythm, the setting. Without the fire, they said, visions were just dreams. With the fire, dreams could walk. And sometimes, they did. You lean closer to the cold stones. One of them is cracked and filled with black moss. It smells faintly of smoke, even now. You wonder how many people sat just where you sit, back straight, hands out, eyes closed, waiting not for warmth, but for presence. The shamans were said to vanish during these rituals. Not physically, but conversationally. They would go still, eyes wide open, lips moving with words that didn't match their tongue. At least one Russian missionary wrote of a shaman who spoke Latin fluently during trance, despite being illiterate and having never left his remote forest village. It wasn't the only anomaly. In 1893, a traveler named Anton Petrov wrote in his journal of a fire he saw one winter near the Angara River. The fire glowed green, he said. He was laughed at by his peers, of course. But even decades later, his description remains vivid. The flame was a color of illness. It did not warm. I watched a woman stand in it without burning. Her eyes were closed, but she was smiling. I do not believe it was a trick. I left and never returned. And still, the fire burned. Even today, some reindeer herders claim the land remembers heat. On certain winter nights, they say, small patches of ice melt into strange, concentric patterns, revealing blackened soil. Sometimes birds refuse to perch near these spots. Dogs whine. Compass needles spin slightly. When asked, the elders shrug. Old fire, they say, still hungry. You try to picture that green fire. What color would it cast on snow? How would it reflect in human eyes? What would it whisper? Would it ask for something in return? You press your fingers to the moss-filled stone and feel a pulse, not literal, not measurable, but undeniable, like a memory echoing backward through time. You are not the first to touch this place. You are merely part of its dream. In the 1960s, Soviet scientists visited some of these fire circles. Most of them dismissed the stories, labeled the rituals as archaic superstition. But one woman, Dr. Irina Zelenko, insisted on documenting every detail. She recorded a strange magnetic distortion near one stone ring, where watches ticked faster for minutes of time. Her notes were confiscated. She was reassigned to a textile factory 2 months later. The forest doesn't like being measured. There's an Evenki tale passed from elder to elder about what happens when the wrong person lights the ritual fire. They say it doesn't stay still. Flames flicker sideways. Shadows walk out of it instead of away from it. And the fire burns blue, not warm, but hollow. Those present at such an event are said to vanish over the next few years, one by one, always in winter, always silently, as if the fire remembers them and calls them back. Still the fire burned. The trees around you groan gently in the cold. The circle feels closer. You smell birch smoke, though there is no fire. Somewhere, a crow calls twice, then falls silent. You could leave now. You could return to the path and forget all this. But you don't. Not yet. Because you are beginning to understand that this isn't a ghost story. It's a continuation. The fire has not gone out. Not really. It only sleeps beneath the roots. Waiting. You wake again inside the forest. Or rather, you never left it. The fire has dimmed now, collapsed into a bed of glowing red embers that pulse with the shallow breath of the wind. You move without urgency, as though your body remembers what to do better than your mind. Under your feet, the moss is wet again. A low fog hugs the ground. There's a faint trace of charcoal in the air, but it doesn't bane. It soothes, like the scent of memory itself. You are not alone here. The rustle of bark being scraped by a knife. The soft clatter of stones being arranged into a circle. A voice humming, a woman's voice, cracked by age, but rhythmic, steady, almost sweet. You drift toward it. The trees thin slightly, and what appears before you is not a hut but a structure of poles and bones. The ancient ritual scaffold. It's older than the forest around it, some say. According to mid-20th century field records, the Evenki, nomadic reindeer herders who move through this land with the seasons, use similar raised platforms not just for storing supplies above snow and wolves, but also as bridges to the sky. Some of these scaffolds were burial places, others ritual stations, and a very few, were places where the shamans performed their fire rites, not to be seen by the living, but by the spirits alone. Tonight, you're permitted to watch. An old woman sits beneath the scaffold, barely clothed in the cold, but warmed by something unseen. She draws symbols in the ash with her fingertip. Circles, spirals, antlers, stars. You don't know their meaning, but they feel familiar. You crouch, quiet, unseen, listening. Shamanism, anthropologists wrote, is not a religion of comfort. It is a dialogue with all that refuses to be tamed. This woman, her name lost to time, is not one of the grand shamans the Soviets later tried to stamp out in the 1930s. She is of the hidden kind, one who never claimed the title, but was feared nonetheless. A dream walker, a fire whisperer. Locals spoke of her as the one who knows where the soul goes when the body dies. She calls to the fire, whispering in Evenki or Yakut. You cannot tell. Her words are carried upward, smoke spiraling like the Milky Way turned inside out. Her face is marked with soot and ochre. Her hands are callous and her eyes do not blink. The shaman's fire rituals were not just for healing or blessing. In some regions of Siberia, especially during winter solstice or the festival of Yayak, fire was the only bridge between the mortal and the spirit worlds. You remember what they say in the text. The fire is not symbolic. It is literal. A being, a boundary, a judge. And yet, even among those who knew this, only a few dared to use it to call down the ancestors. She places a charred branch onto the ember bed. It's from a tree that once grew alone on a cliffside, twisted, lightning blasted, alive against all odds. This would have seen things, and the fire knows it. It catches quickly, and as it burns, the shapes in the smoke begin to form. The first is a stag, enormous and serene, stepping soundlessly through the canopy of stars. The second, a bird, wingless but drifting upward. The third is a human figure, bent, faceless, trembling with hands cupped as if carrying a tiny light. You watch as the shaman gestures to each image, murmuring. Her tone changes with each invocation. Respect for the stag, affection for the bird, fear for the human figure. You understand none of it consciously, but some part of you does, because you feel your body respond, not with chills, but with stillness. That ancient stillness that knows, this is not for us, and yet we are here. The fire flares suddenly, and in that flare you see a memory. You are not yourself. You are another, a herder, a father, wrapped in furs. You are kneeling beside a sick child, their forehead burning. You whisper for the shaman, the fire keeper, to come. But you know what the fire will ask in return. The spirits do not heal for free. They demand stories. They demand honesty. They demand things you have not spoken aloud, not even to yourself. You return to the present. The woman has begun to sing, not in melody, but in cadence. Her chant has no music, only momentum. A beat like the crackle of flame and the pulse of blood. This, scholars believe, is how shamans rode into trance. Repetitive drumming, breathing, chanting. No psychedelics needed. The altered state came from rhythm, repetition, and deep cold. The very landscape itself. Historians still argue whether this altered state was merely psychological or truly spiritual. But perhaps a more important question is, what did they see there? The woman's eyes roll back, and her body begins to sway. Not from weakness, but from somewhere else. Something else. You feel the air tighten, like the space around you has become viscous. The smoke no longer rises but coils. Time does not pass normally here. And then you hear footsteps. Not hers, not yours, from the woods. The fire does not waver. The shaman does not pause. But the thing that enters a clearing, well, it's not a bear, though it walks like one. Not a man, though it wears bones around its neck like a necklace. It sits beside the fire. You freeze. The shaman welcomes it with a word that makes no sound. Only the embers react, flaring briefly in recognition. This, you understand, is one of the old witnesses. It has been called by name. Such entities appear in legends across the Arctic, figures with no fixed form, drawn by ritual smoke and sacrifice. Known by dozens of names, Chindai, Boyane, Tiwajiwayan, but none are entirely safe to invoke. The Chuki tell one who can answer any question, but always ask one in return. And if you cannot answer it, you forget your own name. She asks her question now. You don't know the words, but the fire listens. The witness does not speak with a voice, but you understand its answer anyway. It is a dream, a vision, a warning, a loop. The fire dims. She exhales, and suddenly the tension vanishes. The visitor is gone. Only ashes remain. She lies down beside the fire, and the ritual is over. Not all shamans survive the trance. Some wandered so far into the spirit world they forgot how to return. There are stories, some unearthed in Soviet-era ethnographic journals, others told in whispered Evenki songs, of those who entered the fire to speak with the ancestors and returned without their minds. Their bodies remained, but their eyes were not their own. You move slowly away from the clearing. Behind you, the scaffold creaks, though no wind stays. Back into the forest you go. You think again of the flame, not just as heat or light, but as language, perhaps the only language that spirits speak. And like any language, it remembers who has spoken it truthfully and who has not. You pass a broken mirror leaning against a tree, its surface fogged from within. Your reflection is not looking at you. The pine needles crunch beneath your boots, muffled by the sponge-like softness of the moss, as you leave behind the fragmented remnants of the forgotten village and drift further into the Siberian forest's ancient breath. The moon, swollen and sallow, hangs heavy in the sky, veiled behind shifting tattered clouds that look like fingers brushing the heavens. You pause for a moment, not because you're tired, but because the air has changed. It feels older here, not in the way trees age, but in the way memories linger. You're stepping into land not just untouched by modernity, but unwilling to acknowledge it ever existed. The villagers back at the edge of the tree line called the stretched gel tire cost, which roughly translates to the yellow bone. You'd thought it was a metaphor, but now you see it as something more primal. The color of aged ivory streaks the bark here, and there are patches of soil that look like dried marrow, light and cracked, even in the cold. They had warned you, in those half-whispers and darted glances. The animals do not go there, and neither should you. They didn't say why, only that the air there is not meant for lungs, that sounds bend in unnatural ways. Still, your curiosity pushes forward. You tell yourself this is research, documentation. But deep inside, you know this is something else, something older. Maybe a call, maybe an invitation. The first thing you notice is the scent. Not overpowering, not even unpleasant. Just wrong. A blend of pine tar, distant smoke, rusted iron, and something sticky sweet like syrup boiled into charcoal. It winds its way into your nostrils and sits behind your eyes. You crouch beside a tree stump, blackened and twisted like it had burned from the inside, and notice the telltale remains of something. Wax droplets hardened into translucent beads, a clump of feathers charred at their tips, and shards of clay figurines with faces rubbed smooth. Ritual debris. Offerings. Perhaps. All warnings. You rise slowly and glance deeper into the woods. Hey, the trees do not behave. Branches grow downward, clawing toward the moss instead of the sky. Limbs twist like ropes caught in a wind that doesn't blow. Some trunks lean unnaturally, forming sharp angles as if recoiling from something that once stood here. And the moss beneath your boots has a strange elasticity to it. Every step feels like it breathes back at you. When you look directly, everything is still. But when you glance away, you think you see the pulse. You continue. There are no paths here, just instincts. And maybe, just maybe, a rhythm. Faint, low, like a distant drum or a heartbeat muffled by layers of snow. You follow it until you find a break in the landscape. Not an opening, but a space deliberately made. Carved into the rocky outcrop is a circular platform. Large, broad enough to host 20 people if they stood shoulder to shoulder, though no human footprints mar its icy surface. The stone is marked with deep red ochre, spirals and geometric forms that curl into themselves, as if the stone is trying to remember its dreams. All around the platform, the forest leans in. The trees form a loose amphitheater, their limbs bending toward the center like eager spectators. And on the ground, bones, dozens, clean, arranged, not dumped, not discarded, stacked in configurations that echo the ochre spiral, ribs tucked into vertebrae like puzzle pieces, jawbones facing skyward as if mid-song. You should turn back, but you stay. You sit, folding your legs beneath you, unable to shake the feeling that something is about to happen, not to you, necessarily, but near you, as though the forest is about to remember something out loud. That's when the sound begins. It's not music. It's not language. It's vibration, low and rich and overlapping in slow waves. A kind of humming, like voices buried in the earth have decided to surface all at once. You freeze, not out of fear but reverence. The stone beneath your fingertips feels warmer. The ochre spirals now pulse gently, gold flickers threading their lines like veins waking up. You blink, and the trees seem closer. And then, without warning, it appears. Not with flash, not with drama. Just presence. A figure steps into the clearing as though it had always been here and had merely forgotten to reveal itself until now. It moves with no urgency. It wears robes of bark and feather, stitched with hair and beads that chime gently as it walks. A crown of dark river stones glints dimly atop its head, and the face is hidden behind a wooden mask. No eyes, no mouth, only a narrow slit where breath escapes in white curls. It doesn't speak. It gestures. And when it moves, the trees move too. Their branches sway and sink, the bones rattle softly, and the ochre flares brighter. You think of the wax, the feathers, the crane whose neck was twisted at the village threshold. It all feels connected now. This is not a haunting. You realize it's a lesson, a replay, a memory being coaxed from the land itself. The figure begins to dance. Not theatrically, no spinning, just slow, deliberate circles, arms raised and lowered, feet tracing patterns into the frost. You watch as the ochre symbols glow where the figure steps, activating runes you hadn't even noticed before. With every movement, the forest changes. A fox appears, silent and golden-eyed, watching from the edge. Then a raven, jet black and still. Then a pale reindeer with eyes like obsidian marbles. They do not acknowledge you, only the figure. This isn't a summoning. You understand now. It's a remembrance, a ritual to honor what once was. A kind of sacred rehearsal, done not for an audience, but for the land, for memory. Historians have debated endlessly about these rituals. Some claim the shamans used fermented mushrooms to cross into altered states. Others argue they wielded magnetite stones to distort the senses. Some fringe researchers believe it was all performance. But none of that matters here. This isn't theory. It's happening, and you're part of it. The figure stops. It lifts its arms skyward. The crown of stones on its head pulses, each gem reflecting not the moonlight, but something from within. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel your own memories slip from your grasp. They do not vanish. They drift. A lullaby your mother sang. The smell of your grandfather's coat. A name you once whispered in the dark, long forgotten. The ritual isn't stealing from you. It's sifting, remembering you as much as you remember it. Then it ends, not with a flash, not with collapse. It simply stops. The figure lowers its arms, turns, and walks backward into the trees, fading like mist into the shadows. The animals vanish. The ochre symbols darken. The bones lie still. And you are left in absolute silence. You sit for a while, breathing, watching, listening. Later, historians will wonder what took place here. A fertility rite? A celestial alignment ceremony? A funeral for gods long dead? There are no answers. Only the rune marks carved into stone, and the wax buried beneath snow. You rise. You take a small branch and drag it across the stone, carving a mark of your own, a loop and a line. Not a signature, a symbol, a way to say, I was here, I saw, I remembered. As you step back into the forest, you notice the moss is quiet now. No pulse, no breath, just softness beneath your feet. But you do not look back. Some memories are not meant to be retold, only carried. The charcoal ash stains your fingers as you lift the lid of an iron-banded chest. Beneath it lies a weathered parchment, faintly glowing in the firelight with cryptic glyphs pressed into birch bark. You're deeper in the forest now, farther from known paths, from memory, even from the cadence of your own breath. A damp hush clings to the branches overhead, and there's something odd in the way the trees bend, as if bowed toward a center of gravity you cannot see. This is the threshold clearing. Hey, it said, the veil between life and dream has always worn thin. The Evenki speak of it only in lullabies, fragments of rhyme about a place where roots crawl backward and names are unwelcome. You sit cross-legged, tracing circles into the frozen soil, half aware that the ground beneath you is warmer than it should be. Faint impressions, human knees, handprints, surround you in the frost, echoes of ritual long finished. Or perhaps never finished at all. You feel it before you hear it, the drumbeat, low, measured, not in your ears, but somewhere deeper, behind the sternum, a resonance more than a sound. You rise instinctively, pulled like water uphill. From the shadows ahead comes the unmistakable clatter of hooves on ice. No animals, just a sound, just a memory of antlers against wind, flickering at the edge of sight. Elk spirits, the shamans used to say, were guardians of the world tree's shadow. Not beasts, but messengers of liminal things. You step carefully, not wanting to interrupt. In the clearing center stands a stone dolmen, short, wide, streaked with charcoal, its capstone split down the middle like a peeled fruit. The fracture runs deep, and when you peer into it, a draft of warm air slips upward as if the dolmen itself is breathing. Within its gut are stacked relics, carved wooden idols, shaman's bones wrapped in reed cord, a totem of 9 eyes closed in ash. And feathers, so many feathers, blackened and curled. Raven feathers, perhaps, or some other bird that no longer migrates. There's a sensation now that your body is both present and distant. You observe yourself from slightly behind, as if your consciousness has shifted to the left of your spine. It's subtle, like the edge of a lucid dream. Around you, the forest leans inward. The trees grow tighter, taller, their bark creased with symbols burned in patterns, coils, spirals, weeping faces. A ritual circle, marked not by stones or paint, but by the scars of fire. Historians have long debated what took place in the threshold clearing. Excavations in the 1980s uncovered burned offerings, animal bones, charred dolls, antler pieces, arranged in unmistakably circular fashion. Radiocarbon dated to over 1,200 years ago. They defy easy categorization. Not Buddhist, not animist, not wholly tribal. One scholar called them echoes of forgotten cosmology. Another proposed they were psychogeographic markers, not rituals for the dead, but for guiding the living through altered states. And altered you feel. You reach out to touch one of the tree scars. It feels neither warm nor cold, but electric. Your fingertips pulse with sensation. Suddenly, an image, no, a memory, rises unbidden. You're sitting by a fire with strangers, all of them with painted faces and mirrored amulets around their necks. No one speaks. The drum is still beating. The night folds inward like a collapsing lung. The dolmen exhales again. From behind a fallen log, a shape slithers. Not crawling, not walking, just folding forward. A figure in deer-hide robes, face veiled by stitched leaves, with antlers bound by black twine. It moves toward the dolmen without looking at you. In its hands is a bundle of reeds, and from those reeds come a soft sound, wet, whispering, rhythmic. You don't move, can't move, only watch. The figure kneels at the dolmen's breach, presses its face to the stones, and then vanishes. No smoke, no shimmer. Gone. Somewhere above, an owl screams once, then silence. The clearing feels empty now. The warmth recedes. You find yourself blinking as if waking underwater. The drumbeat stops. Later, anthropologists studying indigenous Iberian shamanism would write about the threshold state, a condition of ego suspension where the practitioner becomes not a person, but a vessel. This experience, they say, was critical to journeying into the upper or lower worlds. But no one agrees how it worked. Some believe it was trance-induced by fasting. Others claim smoke and herbs were used. A few, less accepted voices insist it was music that opened the way, not heard, but felt through the bones. You believe that last one now. There's no path out of the clearing. You don't remember how you entered. But you begin to walk anyway, guided by the angle of starlight slanting through the pines. Behind you, the dolmen sleeps again, its breath shallow, as if waiting for the next arrival. You'll return. Not soon, but someday, maybe when the drum calls you back. The moss under your boots grows thick and deep, like ancient velvet laid over bones. There's a silence in this part of the forest that doesn't just blanket sound, it devours it. Not even your footsteps answer you here. You move with a quiet reverence, knowing instinctively that this is a sacred place, although sacred in a way that makes the skin prickle. The trees no longer sway with the wind. They stand like witnesses. You are not lost, not quite, but you're somewhere that maps forget. It's here that the shamans told of the burning grove, a sacred fire ritual said to summon guidance from what they called the bone ancestors. Not ancestors in the familial sense, but figures older than history, archetypes carved in bone, sung about in riddles, who walk with wolves and swallowed stars. You come upon it suddenly, a circle of blackened tree trunks, each scorched yet still living, their bark fused and bubbling like cooled lava. In the center is a pit of fine gray ash. No embers, no heat, just a memory of fire. You kneel and touch the edge of the pit, and your mind lurches sideways. A vision blooms, not like a movie, but like a memory you're sure you never lived. You are one of them now, a figure in the circle. You wear a headdress made from a bird you cannot name. The feathers twitch as though alive. You're kneeling beside a hollow log, into which you pour a mixture of animal fat and powdered mushroom. The shaman beside you chants a word again and again. Ochuma, Ochuma. A name? A place? A key? The fire bursts upward, not orange, but white-blue. It makes no crackle. It hums, and the humming settles deep in your chest. You look around and see the other figures are already half gone. Their edges blur. Some are weeping. Some are laughing in a low, unnatural rhythm. A woman smears charcoal in a spiral on her chest. A man sways, eyes wide and unblinking, whispering to an invisible guest. You don't know what's real anymore. And in this place, maybe nothing is. Scholars who have studied the burning grove, those few brave enough to come this far north, have tried to understand the ritual. Some say it was a death rite, meant to sever ties with the physical world before burial. Others believe it was initiatory, a trial by vision and isolation, reserved for the next shaman in training. One obscure theory claims it was neither, that the fire was a portal, not metaphorically, but literally, a temporary breach through which spirit forms could pass. The trees, charred but alive, served as anchors. The shamans rarely wrote about the grove. They spoke of it in half-poems and riddles. One surviving fragment reads, "Where the wood weeps ash, the spirit rides a spine of smoke." You rise to your feet slowly, the vision still clinging to you like spider silk. The trees seem closer now, watching, waiting. The pit exhales once more, not smoke, but breath, warm, stale, like something just left. You take a step back and nearly trip on a ridge of twisted roots. They form a pattern, not accidental, a spiral coiling outward. You follow it with your eyes until it points you toward a break in the grove. A path, you take it. It leads you deeper, past tree after tree carved with symbols. Some are crude, like antlers and suns. Others are more complex, interlocking triangles, inverted faces, hands with too many fingers. You remember now something from the whispered lore, symbols not meant to be seen with open eyes. Warnings, maps, or maybe locks. You hear music, but not with your ears. It's as if the forest itself is singing, the branches moaning with wind that doesn't blow. You close your eyes and the song becomes clearer, melancholy, slow, like a lullaby sung through clenched teeth. The path curves and you follow, drawn like a thread through fabric. Eventually, the trees fall away into a small glade. At its center, raised on 4 stilts of bone, is a wooden platform. A stage? An altar? It has no stays. Only a tangle of braided rope hanging from the side. You approach. The wind changes. You smell blood, but old, like rust in a forgotten basin. You climb. The wood creaks but holds. At the center of the platform is a shallow bowl carved into the planks, filled with smooth stones. Each is etched with a single mark. Some are familiar. Sun, moon, eye, tree. Others defy meaning. You reach into the bowl and take one. It's cold. It hums faintly. You place it back. Historians disagree about the platform's purpose. Some believe it was used for sky burials, bodies left to rot under the open air, bones picked clean by birds. Others insist it was a dream stage, where apprentices lay still for days, consuming nothing but melted snow and powdered herbs until visions came. A few fringe theorists propose it was never meant for humans at all, but for the spirits, who needed a stage to act out their messages. You sit. The wood beneath you breathes. The sky above the glade darkens. Or perhaps your eyes dim. Either way, you see less now. But what you see is deeper. Shapes ripple along the horizon. Not animals. Not people. Just movement. The forest tilts. You lie down. And then you hear footsteps. Not yours. Not human. Coming close.